Of Apples and Magic by Legion of Pony. Of Hearts and Hooves. Twilight lay on her bed with Applejack leaned against her, Twilight's hoof rubbing quickly on her mare friend's soaked slit. They had just entered Twilight's room at the castle after their Hearts and Hooves day outing. A lovely, casual date at a cowboy watering hole Applejack liked to frequent. One thing led to another, and they had started discussing the dildo Twilight had mentioned owning and regularly using while walking back. This piqued Applejack's curiosity and led to her asking to come home with Twilight, and she had sensed her desires and accepted. Then Applejack had asked to come to her bedroom, and she had once again accepted. Then they had ended up on the bed. You like that, Applejack? Twilight purred sensually into her ear as she targeted her winking clit more with a hoof tip, making the farmer squirm under her touch, feeling just how wet she had made her with a simple rubbing and dirty talk, her thick lube letting her hoof easily slide along. You like me rubbing your lovely pussy, don't you? Look how wet you already are. I bet you've been waiting for this all day. This wasn't their first nor last time having sex since their first time, with them regularly getting together every few days to relieve some tension, as Applejack liked to put it, after the stresses of work. Now that Applejack was coming into her spring heat, her libido had increased significantly, with her and Twilight spending more and more time in either of their bedrooms, feeding her hunger. You know it, sugar, Applejack replied with a moan, her hoof atop Twilight's cannon as she continued to softly grind the tip into her sensitive, winking nub. Applejack's mind pulsing with pleasure alongside it, and her hips softly rising with each downward movement. Ain't my fault you're so sexy, and good with your hooves. Plus, I'm kinda in heat. Applejack simply enjoyed being pleasured for a while, Twilight equally enjoying pleasing her. Before Applejack finally spoke up with what she had been thinking about since that first evening they had shared on the hill. Hey, Twi, Applejack asked. So I was thinking, isn't that kind of dangerous? Hey, shut it. Anyhow, I was thinking, maybe, we could use your toy on me tonight. I mean, you said it could stop a mare's heat for a time, so... The rubbing stopped as she asked that, leaving Applejack somewhat concerned she may have overstepped some sort of unspoken boundary. Twi? She asked as she turned and looked into Twilight's face, seeing the lavender mare's face twist into a wanton grin. I thought you'd never ask, Twilight said as her horn lit up in its magical glow. But actually, I've got a better idea than just a simple toy. Oh yeah? Yeah. You see, I've been working on learning this new spell, and I thought we could try it out. Okay, yeah, got my attention. What is it? Applejack asked, her tone doing a little to hide her eagerness. Every time Twilight had brought magic into the bedroom, it had been a wonderful time for Applejack and Twilight both, whether it be simply rubbing or even using solidified magic to tease and prod. It had felt amazing and left Applejack eager to experience whatever else her magical mare could come up with. Now that she was in heat, she could only imagine what her wonderful mare had planned for her. Well, you see, after we discussed you wanting to have foals one day, I started looking around a bit for the possibilities of two mares to have a foal together. Besides the standard option of adoption, or one or both of us being studded by an outside stallion, I found there was another lesser known option, at least for unicorns or any pony who knows one. Twilight started before clearing her throat in the way that made Applejack anticipate the incoming history lesson. Back in olden pony times, there were two powerful unicorn mares who loved each other very much. They loved each other so much that they wanted to have a child together. One that was their own and a part of both of them. So, The more powerful of them made and practiced nearly endlessly with a spell, mixing it with this magic and that, trying to find a way to accomplish her goal. Over a year later, she had done it. She had found a way for her and her mare to have a foal together. Wait, what? How's that? Applejack asked, genuinely fascinated, knowing where this was likely going. Still, she wondered if such a thing was even possible, even with alicorn or unicorn magic. Instead of answering, Twilight's horn grew brighter as she concentrated her magic internally. She focused on the spell's specifics, and as she did, she felt like burning in her crotch, in front of where her teats were. She knew what to expect, but Applejack clearly didn't. Twilight, what's going on? Applejack panickingly asked, watching as the raspberry red magic covered her lover's belly, and a small bulge started to form in the other mare's crotch, growing bigger by the second. Twilight concentrated and soon felt as just above her pussy was getting very warm and felt like it was stretching, expanding. As she looked down, she saw her magic encasing her whole lower belly and a lump starting to grow out of her crotch. Right on schedule. Twilight, what are you doing? Are you okay? It's okay, Applejack. I promise you'll like this when I'm done. Just bear with me. Consider this your hearts and hooves day present. But warrior, just relax, Applejack. Trust me. It's okay, really. This is supposed to happen. Applejack was very uncomfortable, but all the same nodded as she watched the expansion continue. Twilight had never done anything like this before in the bedroom. Twilight meanwhile started feeling a tingling inside her head, briefly growing dizzy and her vision swimming before stabilizing again, and she then felt like she had something extra now in her mind. Just like the old book described, it was like it was another part of her, just different, more masculine. As Applejack stared at her crotch, the spell's results were quickly revealed as she saw Twilight had grown what looked like a small pair of testes that were quickly expanding in size, as well as a small coat-sized sheet now between her legs, though it was quickly growing to the size of a stallion's. Twilight, what the hey is that? Applejack asked, staring at the still growing mass growing on her underside. Is that what I think it is? As she reached the final stages of the spell that required less concentration, Twilight's horn dimmed a bit from the brilliant glow it was giving off before, and she opened her eyes, quickly meeting those of her mare friends. It is. That spell I found was to give a mare a stallion's equipment temporarily in order to create male gametes, then transfer them to a female in a natural way, so the two mares could make the foal they so wanted together. But how and why now? We ain't wanted foals yet. Twilight giggled as the spell completed and her horn grew dark, leaving her now endowed with a full set of stallion genitals. How isn't important? Lots of complicated magic and stuff you wouldn't understand. No, not to sound condescending. As for why? Isn't it obvious? Twilight asked, bringing a hoof to rub on the sopping wet mess that was her mare friend's pussy, earning her an instinctive grind against it. Spring is here, and you know what happens to mares during it, since you're currently experiencing it. But Twilight, I ain't ready to have foals yet. We ain't even married. Plus, this spell is so weird. For crying out loud, Twilight, y'all have a cock. Yes, Applejack, I have a penis. Admittedly, it's kind of strange for me too. But I know I can help your heat with the spell. Regarding foals, I know how important that being married before having children is to you, Applejack. And that's why I'm happy to say that this spell comes in two varieties. The original version, which allows for the production of virile sperm for procreation breeding, and a modified variety made later by somebody else, which does not and only produces sterile semen for recreational sex. This version of the spell can be used as basically a living sex toy for both mares or as a simple heat ender. As you know, it's the semen that ends a mare's heat for a while, and I just know this would be a good way to end yours. For both of us. So, I ain't gonna get preggers if we have sex with that? Like, no chance at all? Applejack asked as she pointed at the very obviously swollen sheet between her mare friend's legs. Nope, no chance at all. The ejaculate is 100% sperm-free, as testified by many mares who've tested it, and every one of them came away without foals, except those who cast the wrong version. Upon that confirmation, her instincts already started to burn as she saw it just peeking out of the sheet. She felt another twinge of nervousness. Twilight, this is real weird, innit? Y'all feel alright? Well, flesh molding magic usually is pretty weird, especially those created by one pony alone, but I feel quite fine, really, if a bit hornier than usual, and in a different way. Twilight comforted, meanwhile giving her bulging sheet an experimental rub, her hips shifting upward again in reaction. Applejack, do you want to try this out? If not, we can just use the toy like you asked. I just wanted to make sure the spell would work properly on myself first. That wouldn't hurt either of us if we ever decided to use the other version later for its original purpose. I can safely say it works. Twilight paused, then gave a nervous smile. Plus, I kinda wanted to make your first time something more special than a dildo. Applejack squirmed over her mare friend and got a closer look at what Twilight had given herself. All this talk of having foals and penises and cum, getting her breathing instincts all riled up. The sheet was the first thing that caught Applejack's eye, knowing that within that light purple furred flap of skin was a penis. A penis on Twilight, who was her mare friend. A penis that her body craved on a very deep level. Next, her gaze traveled lower to the tightly cinched sack of skin and the two large oval shapes it contained. The spell also had given Twilight a pair of sizable balls in addition to produce the sperm, even if they wouldn't work this time. Wow, Twilight, so you really got all of a stallion's equipment, huh? Applejack asked, feeling a twist of arousal as she picked up on a faint stallion's musk as she got closer to Twilight's new addition, with its bold odor adding on to the soft, sweet scent Twilight always gave off. This is, well, this ain't what I was expecting when we came up here. It'll be a special first time if that thing works like it's supposed to. Twilight felt a new need growing in her as she smelled Applejack's heated scent so near to her. Sure, Applejack's arousal usually added to her own as she smelled and tasted her mare friend when she was a pure mare, but this was different. Twilight felt a new urge to find the aroused, fertile mare and mount her, to fill her full of her seed and breed her. Ah, so that's what the books meant when it said, you'll become one with the stallion inside you. It seems the spell comes with a stallion's instincts as well, she commented, feeling a stiffness starting to peek out at Applejack's heated scent again, the farm mare's pheromones calling to her newest base need. You smell amazing. Well, thanks. You do too? Applejack said, and she wasn't kidding. The stallion muss Twilight's addition was now producing was setting her need on edge, making her feel very horny now that her body sensed the male in her proximity. She was still nervous about this, with it only being her first time having something inside her, and having actual sex while she was quite fertile, but she knew she could trust Twilight with everything, and that this spell would only do what she wanted it to. She also knew Twilight would never hurt her or go against what she wanted, and that's why she decided to give her virginity to her now, even with Twilight sporting a real penis formed from a spell originally intended to make foals. She was working to get Twilight to have sex with her and end her heat, and wasn't worried in the least about anything. Twilight, I want you to put that big, huge whole dick in me, Applejack said as she squirmed, the burn in her belly starting to grow now. Instead of receiving a stallion-sized cock inside of her, however, Applejack gasped softly as a large purple dildo was suddenly brought into her sight, easily 12 inches long and 5 in circumference. Its length was a good few inches above the average stallion's, that's for sure. It was a completely anatomical model, including a medial ring at its 3/4 point and a pair of artificial testes at its base. First, maybe we should warm you up with this, Twilight said, knowing full well she wasn't ready herself yet, her own length only at half-mast. But maybe, you could touch me down there to help me with the erection? Dang it, Twilight, is that a dildo or a tree? Applejack choked as she looked at the dildo, meanwhile doing as asked, and running a hoof over Twilight's dong, getting a gasp from her and another upward shift of her hips. Twilight clapped her hooves together softly in excitement, the prospect of sharing her most intimate possession, and herself, her mare friend, now at the forefront of her desires. Wow, your hoof feels amazing on my sheet, Twilight cooed, her hips shifting upwards slightly with each downward rub, grinding up against it and feeling twinges of pleasure each time. Can we, Applejack asked a few moments later, now grinding against the toy in her arousal now, though the external stimulation was doing little to properly sate her need. Get on with it. Alright, just lay however you're comfortable. I'll accommodate, Twilight said, then watched as Applejack quickly got into position, laying on her side on the bed and her forehooves beside her, her legs spread wide and putting everything on display. Applejack's slit was already swollen in her excitement, the titillation of the earlier rubbing by Twilight only fanning the flames. Twilight was more than interested herself at the sight Applejack presented to her, and she moved so that she was laying with her crotch presented to Applejack, also allowing her to see the other mare's crotch. As an orange hook quickly made its way down to her penis, she felt it touch her again as she started watching Applejack's clit lightly winking to her in anticipation. Oh, wow. Twilight gasped out as Applejack's soft hoof touched her peeking glands, her hips shifting forward as the hoof tentatively started rubbing the flat of the head, Twilight feeling her shaft twitching. The sensation was intense, like Applejack was rubbing her clit, but in a different place. The glands is really sensitive. Applejack stopped rubbing. You alright? She asked, instantly receiving a nod. No, I'm fine. Just treat it like my clit. Not too much at first, okay? Okay, Shug. You're growing, Applejack said, indeed seeing more of Twilight slipping out at the gentle rub she was giving a lustful smile as she felt her cock growing harder under her hoof. You look real nice down there. Twilight's shaft was a light pink with a deep lavender mottling as it reached the base, a thick medial ring at its center. It was actually fairly average in length judging from its current state, and as it engorged more from her rubbing, Applejack saw that it stayed that way, with it being 8 inches long at its full hardness. She kept rubbing along the shaft as she started hearing Twilight lightly panting now, feeling her fully erect now. "Well, your hoof feels as lovely as ever," Twilight cooed, nuzzling up against Applejack's belly, making the mare beneath her sigh softly. After some gentle rubbing on the leg before her, and some more light teasing from Twilight's dildo on her own needing marehood, Applejack was beyond ready, her lower belly burning rather unpleasantly. She then rolled over and got into a traditional breathing position, her chest on the bed and her rump and tail flagged high in the air, ready for her stallion to mount her. "Hey, Twi, you just gonna lay there teasing, or are you gonna put it in me already?" Applejack asked somewhat impatiently, the lewdness surely getting Twilight's attention and making her tense a bit. "Are you sure about this, Applejack? I mean, this is your first time, right? And everybody knows what happens the first time. I mean, are you sure? Twi, I know exactly what I'm getting into, and I want you to be the one to pop my cherry. Now just go slower first. I'm a tough mare. I'll be fine." Twilight audibly gulped, and could tell by Applejack's false, overconfident tone that she was nervous as well. "Well, okay. Here goes." Twilight started off by mounting her, getting a pleased sigh as Applejack felt the warm body climbing upon her, the hooves gripping around her sides and the underbarrow rubbing her croup. It just felt so perfect for both of them. Not entirely sure how to please Applejack in this manner, only having used her hooves and muzzle on her before now, Twilight just went about this in the manner she had always pleased herself with the dildo. She started slowly grinding her stallion hood along the entire length of Applejack's slit, receiving a light tremble of her leg at that new sensation. That's pretty nice, actually. Applejack cooed, feeling herself winking against the mare's length with each slide over her slick entrance, especially liking it when the medial ring rubbed over her clit, her realizing it felt way better than the dildo had. Twilight just kept rubbing herself gently over her mare friend's messy pussy for a while, coating her own stiffness with her warm, thick fluids well to make the next step easier. She even slid herself so the flare went between Applejack's small, pillow-like teats after the next rub, noticing another gentle twitch from her leg at that. She certainly loved it too, and continued for a short while. "Okay, Twi, enough teasing. I want it now," Applejack said lustfully, her hips pushing backwards now in expectancy, wanting to feel what it was like to take a stallion cock. Without another word, Twilight positioned herself so that her flare was facing Applejack's entrance and, after missing for a while, lightly pressed against her, watching Applejack squirm as she felt the flat tip on her lower lips. With one final nod from Applejack, Twilight added a bit more force behind her thrusts, making her partially swollen flare pop into Applejack. Applejack felt stretched. It wasn't an entirely unpleasant sensation, but it was strange and slightly painful, like stretching out a cramp almost, hurting a bit more, but having the same relieving feeling. Twi," Applejack moaned as Twilight kept sliding slowly deeper into her. Applejack feeling as that stretching sensation expanded deeper and deeper, feeling more and more contentedly filled. It felt so right to her to be filled like this, to feel Twilight deep inside her like this. Twilight watched as she made more of herself disappear into her mare friend's snatch, feeling the tight, slick, and very warm feeling of Applejack's inside surrounding her now more and more, satisfying her on a deep primal level. With that instinctive affirmation and the pleasured sounds coming from Applejack letting her know she was quite enjoying being filled up by her, Twilight started to let her stallion instincts take over more now, her hips rocking softly back and forth, and each time pulling out, some then plunging deeper. As she suddenly felt some resistance against her pushing and heard Applejack lightly gasp in pain, however, Twilight instantly stopped, knowing exactly what that meant. "Applejack, are you sure? For Pete's sake, Twilight, I want this. Just make it quick, like pulling off a bandage." Twilight was hesitant, but nodded. She suddenly grabbed Applejack's tail between her teeth and yanked on it hard as she rammed her hips forward swiftly, in turn hearing a quiet, pained cry from Applejack, noticing her biting the pillow she had in front of her. Twilight winced, even to this day remembering the stinging pain of losing her own hymen, and as such tried to ease her lover's deflowering. Sure, it felt really good to be mostly hilted inside that hot, squeezing warmth now. Her stallion side smelling the heated mare constantly, and making Twilight want to rut her seed into her. But she was able to overcome the urge. Applejack's comfort was far more important to her than just getting off. Applejack indeed felt a sharp stinging pain in her groin as she lost her virginity, but also another lesser pain at her dock, which she found she oddly focused on more. She was a tough mare, however, and the only thing that escaped her was that one surprised cry. "Wow, that's smart." "One sec," Applejack stated, Twilight holding still inside her while her body adjusted, and after a few moments more she felt the pain fade, instead being replaced by that gentle lightheadedness, as well as a feeling of fullness and pleasant stretching from earlier. Something then occurred to her. "Twilight, why did you yank on my tail?" Twilight still held the hair in question between her teeth, quickly spitting it out. "Well, I thought that if I made a distraction someone else, it would help you focus on the lesser pain instead of, basic psychology," Twilight said, wincing upon looking back and seeing a small amount of red mixing with what of Applejack's fluids were leaving her and pooling on the floor. Well, it worked, and it feels really nice down there now," Applejack said, as she now felt the pain completely fade, replaced instead by a growing, what could only be likened to a hunger of sorts, the same kind she always felt during her heats, but much more intense now that she was actually mounted and penetrated. Now that she felt Twilight throbbing inside of her, now that she felt her heartbeat for a connection with her. "You think you could start, moving now? I need you to finish what you started," Applejack asked, and Twilight nodded, starting to slowly, unsteadily thrust into her, her stallion hood easily sliding deeper, given how wet she was, and making the prior gently gasp at the sensation. For Applejack, it was like finally getting an itch scratched, but 1,000 times more intense, satisfying her on a level she had never reached with only her hooves, nor with Twilight's hooves or tongue. This was entirely new. "Woo, Nelly, it feels like it's going all the way into my belly," Applejack said, her tone one of slight surprise and heavy arousal, watching as Twilight's hips moved closer to her rump, feeling each inch that slid deeper as she did. The sensation of that length of warm hardness being introduced further into her squeezing body. Then the extra stretching of Twilight's medial ring popping inside made Applejack feel complete in a base, instinctive way she had never experienced before. One that she really wanted to experience more, then again, and again. "Yeah, it feels really good when I'm all the way in, huh, my sexy little mare?" Twilight asked, as she realized she was base deep in Applejack a moment later, her swollen testes pressed against her soaked thighs and teats. "Wow, didn't think you could take it all your first time. I know I couldn't take all of my toy my first time as a filly." Applejack was in a bliss as she felt her mare friend's phallus sliding into and out of her, feeling her honey streaming down her occasionally trembling back legs, soaking her rump and the sheets under her in her arousal. Each pull out and pump in made Applejack's body pulse in pleasure, her mind fuzzy, her breathing shuddering, feeling like she had bucked 100 apple trees, when in reality all she had done is rocked her hips in time and accepted what Twilight was at first so softly, then so vigorously giving her. Meeting each so deep push and feeling the gently pulsing member pushing deep inside her with each hilting. After a few minutes of this, Twilight slowly increased the pace every once in a while until she reached a pace that rocked Applejack with each entry, making her a quivering mess of a mare. Her face and the pillow was covered in her saliva, her rump and legs no less soaked with her arousal. Applejack felt a tension starting in her belly, one she was familiar with. Her orgasm was nigh. She tried to tell Twilight, but it just came out as a loud, pillow-muffled moan. "You're getting close, huh, Applejack?" Twilight asked, noticing Applejack's winks and rocking tempo growing much more rapid and less steady, her breaths growing heavier and her passages squeezes on her cock getting more rhythmic. "You ready to come?" Applejack tried to reply, but instead only gave another deep moan as Twilight suddenly shifted her thrust downward, a sharp bolt of pleasure traveling her spine as her swelling flare pushed into an especially sensitive area and started to really grind there, her bedeal ring rubbing her clit with each shallow entry and exit. "I'm gonna make you come so hard, Applejack. Get rid of that nasty heat." As she felt a tingling, rubbing sensation on her clit that could only be Twilight's magic alongside the ring, catching it mid-wink and rubbing circles on it, Applejack finally gave a high-pitched whinny as she felt the pressure in her belly burst, her whole body tensing as she then came hard. As she climaxed, Applejack felt something stretching deep inside her, followed by a pulsing sensation coming from the rock hardness now hilted in her, and no longer thrusting, just leaving her with something to constantly squeeze on, as Twilight evidently neared her own climax, and her glands flared. Suddenly, Applejack felt a few tiny spurts of warm fluid deep inside her, even warmer than Twilight's length, now throbbing along her entire passage. And as she felt that hot pre-cum shoot deep into her, Applejack fell silent, her whole body trembling as that set her over, and she had the most intense orgasm she had ever had. Her body was clamping down on the now pulsing, twitching cock inside of her as she heard Twilight cry out in her own bliss at the increased tightness now wringing her stallionhood. Applejack's thick, fertility-telling fluids a waterfall down her quaking legs as her mind went white, her body milking the climaxing stallionhood of what it naturally desired. After a few seconds of ecstasy, Applejack came back to reality, hearing a deep moan behind her. As she looked back to the shuddering mare atop her, she saw Twilight tensing as she started thrusting at the same speed she'd used during the crux of her grunting, making Applejack rock back and forth with the force. "Coming!" Twilight cried, then gasped. Applejack watched in a daze as Twilight's hips sharply slammed forward into her, and she felt the pulsing and expanding deep inside her, hearing her mate cry out once more as a spray of thick cum escaped her and splattered deep inside the procreant pony pussy she was packed and pumping profusely into. Feeling her hips rolling on reflex as she continued to slam in and out, making Applejack's own pleasure spike again as her fertile fields were watered. Twilight quelling her heat with the warm boy goo. Twilight's own marehood sprayed her own fem-cum all over the bed as her slit started winking and her passage started its own contractions, adding a calmer mare orgasm on top of the raging stallion one, and leaving her in absolute bliss as she flooded the farm pony's mare's womb with her infertile foal cream. After a moment of experiencing 2 orgasms at once, Twilight slumped down onto Applejack as she continued to give spurt after spurt of her hot cum into the farm pony's depths. She herself knew Applejack wouldn't get pregnant because of this, but her instincts didn't, leaving her feeling quite content and accomplished instead. Her urge to plant her seed sated as both mares lay panting, both completely satisfied in sharing their afterglows in silence. Twilight stayed lodged inside of Applejack, reticent to pull out, keeping the load of her cum deep inside her mare on instinct, as Applejack in turn shifted her hips up, feeling Twilight's cum pool around her partly dilated cervix, leaving her body totally satisfied as she felt some soon trickle inside, ending the burning she had been feeling. The feeling of Twilight's embrace, the warm, beautiful, and lovely mare atop her, and now planting soft kisses on her muzzle and lips, left Applejack feeling quite lovely and instinctively fulfilled, filled to the brim with her mate's cooling cum. Even still, she couldn't help but feel disappointed she wouldn't carry a foal after this, but also knew she needed to keep the promise she had made to her parents. "Hey, Twi? You're right. I really did love that. I love my special sun pony. Thank you for ending my heat. Yeah, it was quite amazing. And I love you too, my special sun pony. Thank you for trusting me." More silence. The two were once more locking lips, as Applejack still felt Twilight's rock hard inside her, even after losing her first huge load. A puddle of their combined lusts pooling between her back hooves as Twilight's flare reduced, as well as their love mixing inside her. "Twi? Yeah? Can we do that again? I think my heat's starting up again. My bed's gonna need to be deep cleaned after this," Twilight thought, but she only smiled. "You bet your cute orange flank we can. But I get to be on top this time." "What the?"